In this module, we're going to look at online learning and the technologies that support online learning, in particular, the learning management system software. So firstly, we've got virtual learning environments. These are the online spaces. Normally they're online. There was a transitionary phase when we had some virtual environments that you would just install on your computer, but nowadays these are primarily online spaces in which learning can occur and be facilitated. Now, most of them built upon a tradition of distance learning, whereby material would be posted out physically to students. They would work on that material, it would be posted back and assessed and feedback provided, and things would go backwards and forwards, often taking many days, if not weeks, and sometimes even months, between interactions. Nowadays, these can occur almost instantaneously, or what we call synchronously, such as our online discussions. So let's look at some of the tools and technologies we've got available to assist us with virtual learning environments, because this could be an area whereby your career takes you, and certainly all schools now incorporate some aspect of virtual learning environments, and many will be increasingly incorporating such environments into the classroom. So the first aspect is a learning management system. Just about every school now has a learning management system, and certainly all universities do. Now, primarily they're to help with the administration of the courses and what occurs in the classroom. You get your students' lists, you get a place to centralize the provision of resources and distribute those out to your students, a place whereby everyone can log into and access the same sort of approaches, be they resources or mechanisms for interacting with each other. And often it's a restricted space whereby only students enrolled in particular courses can access particular information, or particular classes can get access to certain resources that a teacher has set up. And that's been its strength and also an element of its weakness. Certainly it's helped with copyright issues so that we can provide material to students without having to worry about it being public and facing all the different issues related to that regarding copyright. But in many ways it has been restricted, and some environments are more restricted than others, and we'll talk about those as we explore the different technologies. But in some cases, learning management systems have been used to limit what students have got access to, and indeed in some cases what teachers have access to. It may be to limit so that only students in your particular class have got access to your particular information, and students in other classes don't have access to that. So your Year 6 students may have access to your material, or your Year 9 science class may have access to your material, but the other Year 9 science classes or Year 6 students won't have access to it. So in some ways that's good, in some ways that's bad. So it allows teachers to manage the processes and self-guide learning for students, assemble and deliver learning content, and consolidate learning initiatives on a large scale. Some of the strengths of learning management systems that I've seen, in particular, probably the strongest use of them was, would have been over 10 years ago now, but with the military. There, the military does lots and lots of short courses, and you never know who's going to actually be teaching them, so you could be assigned to teach a particular course at a moment's notice. But many hundreds of these courses now are available through the learning management systems, so the instructor would simply go and grab the package to be taught and go away and teach it to the students. And then the advantage they had was that there was always a review process of how to improve every single lesson. Often quite a complex process, and where you've got hundreds of different people all around Australia teaching these various modules at any one time, and each of them going through a review process after each lesson. The improvement of each of those lessons was quite impressive. So there was a constant improvement and refinement, so that the lessons, even though they were very, very directed and very set, were constantly improved to make them as efficient and effective as possible. And it was just an interesting approach to using a learning management system to improve the teaching. Now, in classrooms, and in K-12 classrooms in particular, We probably don't want to go down that pathway because we want to leave teachers to interpret the curriculum and provide their own particular approaches to learning in a much more effective way than the standardized processes used in the military. But there are many who are proponents of learning management systems that see that teaching, and indeed K-12 teaching, could follow that pathway, whereby we get expert teachers to develop up learning packages and less experienced teachers deliver these packages or help students work through various learning packages. That has lots of issues for teaching as a profession and the professionalism involved. Now, as a beginning teacher, it can seem very useful to have a whole lot of material prepared for you that you can just deliver. But you need to think about the long-term consequences of such things. And for example, what's occurring in Queensland state schools at the moment with the C2C material is an example of where pre-packaged material being provided to teachers is being delivered on a wide scale across the state. Now, it's great if you're very new and if someone gives you all your lessons to prepare or already prepared and you just have to go through and manage how students engage with that material, that can seem very enticing. But if that then becomes your job, whereby you are no longer required or trained or have the capacity to develop your own lessons, that does have an impact upon your long-term independence and capability as a teacher. So something to think about. Even though it may seem easier to just go and grab stuff that's been prepared for you, it can have consequences. So there are various examples of learning management systems, but there's also a move away from learning management systems to what's called personal learning environments. Now, this is where you basically use a whole range of technologies to create your own equivalent to a learning management system. So this might be using things such as Google Sites, blogs, wikis, Twitter, Facebook, other social media tools, and you manage how you present material to students and also how students manage their own material. So they might have their own website where they store and put material up for you to look at, rather than have them submit material to your particular learning management system site. And they might communicate with each other through public blogs and wikis and so forth, or email, instead of posting those to message boards within a learning management system. Now, there are some advantages to this, but of course there are also disadvantages. In terms of student safety and security of the information being presented on such open environments, there can be problems with that. So you need to consider that, and particularly it's looking as though it's very useful for adult learners, personal learning environments, but in the main, at the moment, most students in K-12 work within closed learning management systems. But as the advantages of personal learning environments emerge, particularly around goal setting and managing your own learning process, and if we value that in our students and we want to encourage them to manage that learning process, then allowing them to have control over their learning environment becomes an important part of that developmental process. And so we may see where we encourage students maybe through the middle years or the upper years of high school to start developing their own learning management system, whereby in the lower primary we look after that and manage that for them while they still develop the capabilities to do so on their own. So that's just some things that may be emerging in the near future. Another big popular thing at the moment is what's called massive online open courses. These are where you can enroll in generally the university level courses and go through your learning where it's free, but there are of course some downsides to that. The courses tend to be very structured, either where you simply work through courseware or course material and online quizzes and so forth, and there's no real interaction such as on discussion boards or and certainly not the video type interaction that we have in our course, because many of these courses are massive, in the tens and even hundreds of thousands of students. So obviously that's far too many to have involved in any one conversation, even on a discussion board, once you get over a couple of hundred students, it becomes unworkable in terms of the number of messages and communications occurring. Now, there have been moves to try to look at ways of effectively managing student-to-student communication within such environments, whereby you form small groups, say of 10 to 20 students, and they communicate with each other, and not necessarily with the other thousands of students that are in the course. But you still have the problem there whereby it's very difficult for students to communicate with the instructors, with the lecturers or teachers involved in large-scale courses. Of course, there's simply too many of them for the instructors to manage. There have been a few where they've got hundreds of tutors, etc., to try to manage the process, but in the main, massive online open courses are ones whereby they rely upon the technologies to manage the interactions with the students rather than the instructors. Of course, the instructors still provide videos and messages out to the whole group, but it's the two-way communication that is somewhat lessened in massive online open courses. So let's look at a couple of the learning management system platforms before we then have a look at online learning and some of the affordances available in that. Blackboard is probably the most popular, or certainly the most well established in educational institutions, and it's the one used here at the university, whereby we call it Learning at Griffith, but it runs the Blackboard system. It's also the same system used by Education in Queensland and a number of other private schools also use that environment. Okay, the Education Queensland system is called the Learning Place. And you can access it also through iPads and Android devices or apps, but primarily it's accessed through a web browser. Now, Blackboard emerged originally out of a system designed for corporate training, so it does have a particular approach to pedagogy, generally direct instruction, whereby you present course material, students work through some quizzes, and do an assignment or two, and maybe have some communication on the discussion boards. So it doesn't incorporate some of the other tools that we're using in this course, for example, such as the video communications, and it also doesn't do discussion boards very well, as you're probably finding with our rather clunky discussion board system. But it does do well the aspects of course administration, of being able to assign students to courses, manage their enrollments, all of those back-end technologies that are very important for large institutions to help manage things effectively, so that you know you get enrolled in particular courses and can change things and do stuff, whereby in the past, when we used to do all that manually, it could often take weeks to change a course and things of that nature. Now, Moodle is a free version, what's known as open source learning management system. It was developed quite a while ago now, but it provides much of the same functionality as Blackboard, and it has developed quite a strong following amongst many schools in particular, because it is cheaper. It's also a little bit more easier to use, and provides more functionality down to the individual teachers to be able to change things and do things a little bit more effectively. So you may find yourself teaching in a school where Moodle is deployed as their learning management system. But there are a few others as well. Sakai is a very popular one for those that are exploring different pedagogies, because it approaches the learning that occurs a little bit differently, particularly with collaborative projects and e-portfolios, and allows a lot more interaction between students than the more traditional learning management systems. So that's a slightly different approach to learning management systems. Edmodo is another very popular one in schools, and it's all web-based. So it sort of works much more on the models learnt from social media, like Facebook and things of that nature. But it has all the major functionality of a traditional learning management system, but a little bit easier to manage because it's done on the web. And it also has a nice badge granting system, whereby you can gamify various aspects of your courses and award students badges when they complete various activities. And that's an effective aspect of that particular tool. And finally, there's the Canvas learning management system, which is becoming more and more popular. And again, it's all web-based, and it allows you to specify learning outcomes very easily. So you can fit in various rubrics and curriculum tables of learning outcomes and manage and track how students are engaging with those fairly effectively. It also has a fairly strong interaction with the social media tools. So that's the range of learning management systems that are available, and you can have a look at those and see some of the examples in the video clips to explore what's involved in learning management systems. But now let's look at online learning itself. Just make sure I'm put this in the window for you. Okay. So online learning, as you can read through the material, has been around for quite a long time now. Originally it was computer-based learning, then it became computer-assisted instruction and internet-based training and web-based training. There's been a whole lot of terms associated with it. But fundamentally we call it now just online learning. But there's been a bit of a move in recent years towards the concept of blended learning. This is where we take aspects of online learning, aspects of classroom learning, and aspects of mobile learning, and combine those to make a more effective learning experience than one approach would achieve in itself. So again, in our course, you would have seen elements of this where we've got a lot of material occurring online, where we're doing as you're doing now. But we've also got some elements where we occur in the classroom, whereby we had our workshops, and also some mobile learning or learning off at other locations, such as you experienced if you went to the off-campus workshop. So a blended approach does allow us to incorporate different elements that are specific to particular environments. And you can have a look at the video clip and see how that is. A few other terms you need to sort of be familiar with: synchronous and asynchronous. Now, synchronous is where we're doing things live, such as our whole group discussion, where we're talking together at the same time, either by watching the video and chatting in the Q&A, or by being on the same panel in the same video. Now, asynchronous is where we do things not at the same time, such as you watching this video clip, where I've prepared it sometime previously, and then you're watching it sometime after that. So that's the two main aspects of online learning. Now, synchronous generally involves a lot more work and a lot more expense and effort, because everyone has to be there at the same time, engaged in the same discussion. And when things are online in that respect, that involves a bit of complexity in organizing things using Skype or Google Hangouts or other environments. Of course, we also have the Blackboard environment where we use the Collaborate system, whereby we can talk with chat and share and interactive whiteboard and material in that way. But that's where we're doing things at the same time. Asynchronous is where we use things such as email, blogs, wikis, discussion boards, websites, all of these sort of resources and video clips, so that you can do these at your own flexible time frame, when it best suits your external requirements, such as sporting or work requirements, but also sometimes you're just not in the mood for learning, while other times you are. Hopefully at various times in this course you are at least at some time engaged with learning. Of course, there is the danger with any online learning environment that there is some of the responsibility of learning is passed on to students, whereby you have to manage your own time and ensure that you complete activities and engage with the learning activities effectively. Now, there are some approaches we can use to try to support students in that process by setting small learning activity or small assessment tasks over a period of time, having some asynchronous activities whereby you're encouraged to participate, and also using some digital tracking of when you access resources and when you view video clips and all of those sort of approaches. So there are some ways of assisting that, but unlike a a more traditional face-to-face classroom environment, whereby if students are disengaged, you can sort of come and stand close to them or tap them on the shoulder or ask them to engage in the task, and you can use that pressure to encourage students to engage with the learning. In an online environment, in the main, the responsibility falls upon the students to manage that. And I'm sure many of you are facing that same issue as you're engaging with this course. A couple of other aspects you need to be aware of. Linear learning is where generally these are like the self-paced or worksheet type learning, whereby you do a series of tasks or activities. We have some of that in our course here, whereby you're asked to read through a textbook or the text, look at the video clips. We have our discussion, then you've got the quizzes that are available to assess that learning, and then other tasks that are available to assess that as well. Alternatives to this can involve different pathways, whereby based upon how you've learnt something, say if you do the quiz and you get below 30%, it might then lead you to a website which has a whole lot of other remedial material to go through and explore. Whereby if you get between 30 and 70%, then it presents some more information for you to go through on the next topic. And if you get above 70%, it might skip the next topic and take you to a more advanced topic. So it can be a little bit more involved than simply a pure linear approach to learning. And the ultimate aim there is to have differentiated learning, whereby using software or using teachers' understanding of each individual student, providing specific learning activities and learning resources for each individual student based upon their particular learning needs at any particular time. Now that's a complex and involved process to be achieved, but more and more we're finding that software is available to do a lot of that for us and make it possible. In the past, that's been very difficult. Now we can allow student self-selection, much as what you've got in this course, whereby the various assessment tasks you can choose from and engage in various levels of depth in particular areas of content of the course. So not all of you, for example, might be interested in learning management systems. So once you've finished this might be all that you have to do with learning management systems. But others may think that that could be something that could be very important for them in their future teaching and decide to do one of the assessment tasks around learning management systems and delve into and get a greater understanding of learning management systems through that process. So in that way, this course does differentiate, whereby each of you will choose different assessment elements to complete and focus on different areas of ICTs and educational technologies. Now, other terms, collaborative learning. This is a big aspect of online learning. In the main, for this course, you're working essentially independently. We don't have any collaborative assessment tasks, and much of the activities are done individually. Now, I do encourage you to form study groups and things of that nature, but in the past, I've run much more collaborative courses, some of them involving group assignments and peer assessment. Peer assessment is where you assess other students, and there are some very good technologies that allow you to manage that process as a teacher and to assign automatically out what students have submitted online to other students to then assess. And that can be one approach that's done for very large courses, because you can have the assessment burden passed on to students instead of having the teacher have to do all of the assessment. Of course, there are some educational benefits to that as well, in that students having to assess each other or assess different material, they tend to learn that material more effectively in having to understand it sufficiently to be able to assess other students. So there is some good advantage to that, but at the moment I've taken that out of this particular course. Of course, you've got so many other things that you're learning about. I didn't want to overload you with other complexities. But collaborative learning can be facilitated effectively, particularly in online environments, whereby you can have shared, for example, shared Google documents, where everyone can work on the same document, even at exactly the same time. So if they're writing an assignment together, they can actually all be writing on the same document, even though they're separated physically from each other. And there's a whole lot of other technologies such as Dropbox and various blogs and other online environments that can also facilitate collaborative work. Okay, we've got a couple of other little terms you should be aware of. Classroom 2.0 or e-learning 2.0 are simply where we're seeing things going next. Nowadays we're starting to talk about 3.0 for many of these tools. Of course, we've had 2.0 for so long. But for example, in e-learning, use of virtual worlds has been seen as a new technology where online learning may be progressing. And then there's mobile learning, whereby we use mobile devices such as mobile phones and iPad devices more effectively for online learning. Okay, just finally, you should be aware of the various technologies associated with these. Audio, so where we're actually just speaking and hearing each other. So we've had radio for a long time for online learning, but nowadays most things are done over the internet, where we use tools such as Skype or things of that nature. And you can always record things as podcasts, which are recordings of normally just your voice, and you make that then available for your students. Or you go to the extreme and have those distributed out like music clips are distributed through tools such as iTunes. But more and more now we've moved to video, whereby you record video of what's occurring and often have the voiceover, as you're seeing just now. And while this used to be done on things such as VHS tapes, nowadays we've moved to CDs or DVDs, but more often it's now done over the internet. Then you've got computers, tablets and mobile devices, which are the technologies we use to actually view the course material and listen to it or watch the videos, etc. Blogging is where we have an online log or diary that's added to sequentially over time, with each new entry being a new entry into the blog. And that's being used a lot, particularly for collaborative writing. Then you've got tools such as webcams. I'm sure you all know what they are now. The whiteboards, but we have interactive whiteboards that can occur simply through a website, whereby what you write on the screen or type on the screen is then seen by all students. And some of them allow you to have two-way communication in that respect. So the students can also add things to the screen and use it as a collaborative whiteboard. Screencasting is what you're experiencing right now, where I've recorded this as to what's occurring on my computer screen and of course it also records my voice, providing a voiceover to explain what I'm talking about as I move through what's occurring on my computer screen. Now it doesn't need to be just text or textbooks as we're doing here. I could be narrating over a video game that's playing, or an interactive simulation, or even a video clip. So screencasting is a very common instructional tool now, whereby you explain how, particularly if you're explaining to students how to do something on a computer. And then of course we can combine all these technologies in various ways, and then they're called learning technologies or instructional technologies or educational technologies. There's a whole range of terms used, and they can then form, as I mentioned before, our virtual learning environment or personal learning environment. So rather than just relying upon the tools that are available within any one learning management system, you can use a whole range of tools, as we're doing in this course, rather than just the tools available in one particular system. And finally, that all leads to creating a virtual classroom, whereby you can have students and engage with students, and there's various technologies that are now emerging to support that, but I'll let you read through that yourself. Now, we've talked about learning management systems. Learning content systems or content management systems are very similar to learning management systems, but it's really where you just provide access to files or restrict access to files. And then there's computer-aided assessment, whereby the computer actually goes through and assists with the marking process. Now in our course, we do that with the quizzes, whereby they're marked automatically by the computer. But there's now technologies available, though we're not using them yet in this course, whereby you can have computers automatically assess essays, and certainly they can assess things like computer programs or mathematical solutions to problems in a very effective way. So you'll see more and more of this automated assessment becoming popular in classrooms, not just to aid teachers in reducing their assessment burden, but also allowing greater feedback to students. If you can give feedback to students very easily on their essays, for example, you can have them submit every single draft of their essay every night and have the computer provide feedback on how they've done their essay, whereby as a teacher you simply couldn't manage or cope with that amount of drafting. So that's a technology that's becoming more and more important and should help the learning process by providing greater feedback to students. And we've talked about MOOCs, but there's a little bit more information there about the popularity of MOOCs and their current take-up. So that's a summary of the readings for learning management systems and online learning. Okay, as you'll see, it's a fairly complex area and it's a very evolving area. But there's lots of emerging job opportunities and career prospects in online teaching, and certainly there'll be more and more integration of online teaching approaches, particularly within the blended learning integrated approach, that will occur at all levels of schooling. Now, it is occurring in our primary schools now. It's certainly occurring in the high schools. And two of my tutors in various courses at the moment have been withdrawn from primary schools to work as online teachers in different experiments occurring in Education Queensland just at the moment, with several hundred teachers being withdrawn from primary schools to teach online. So as a beginning teacher, it's in a space that you certainly need to keep track of and explore the possibilities that may emerge from online learning. Bye for now.